Monday morning to you. It is now the 3rd of November. 3rd? What, 2nd, 3rd? 4th of November. 4th. I don't even know what day it is. And I am Brigid Burke, coming to you from Morning Coffee with Brigid at Transition Life Coaching. And good morning, Alex. And yeah, we are back to these bright mornings and me trying to figure things out. We actually had a really, really beautiful sunrise today. I took some photos. Good morning, Joanne. I should actually share some of them because it was just like every color you could imagine this morning. I was just doing some stuff here and I was just like, wow, just sitting and looking and paying attention. And there's still, we are what they call past peak here in terms of leaves, but there's still, out my window, there's still a beautiful combination of colors. Not as vibrant as before, but they're still there. And with the way that the sky looked, it's almost like they matched each other. It was kind of cool this morning. Good morning. You're all turned around. Yes. I decided because before I was kind of having by the windows so that, I could kind of watch the sunrise with you guys, like we could watch it together. But right now with the time change, there's not really a whole lot to see out there. That it's kind of, this burst of beautiful color, and then it's kind of like, flat. So I was like, let's just go back to this. And probably as we get later in the month, we'll turn it around again. But we'll do that. And Melissa, actually, I think I sent you a message this morning because I saw you had sent me a message last night. We're going to be doing I think I've mentioned that we are going to be doing something together on the 1st. I never do well with the time change. It doesn't matter if we spring ahead or fall behind. Oh, you know what? I think a lot of people don't, to be fair. I know that it was weird for me last night because my body's tired and I'm like looking at the clock and I'm like, oh, but it's, it's only this time. And I'm like, yeah, but yesterday it was this time, it was an hour later. That's why I'm probably tired. So, and I've been sleeping okay, but like I said, my body has just been in a lot of pain overall. So that's actually Sagittarius is in my Virgo house. And I feel like the Venus and Sagittarius thing, it's kind of making an issue for me. Good morning, Suda. So when I have to kind of figure out, what's the best for me in terms of health and everything else. It's very, the time change is very weird. I was just going to say, Melissa and I are going to be doing an event on December 1st in Chester, New Jersey. So if you in New Jersey or you know somebody in New Jersey, I never got a notification you went live. Yeah, good morning, Sam. Or good afternoon, Sam. It's annoying sometimes because I have had that complaint from people. And when I do my other podcast at noon, there's a lot more people that don't seem to get the notification. I'm going to be doing the noon live stream today. Over at Katonia. So, it's really annoying when that happens. But I'm glad you checked in because if you know it's the time, sometimes it's just to, be able to do that. But, So what was I going on? And good morning, Pat. I have I don't know. I can't get out of my way hormonal weather, but I'm tired of feeling like the Tin Man. Yeah, I understand that. Oh, good morning. Good morning, Amy. I understand you, Joanne, on that. It's definitely, that's kind of what it feels like. I have to get up and do like some somatic yoga and stuff in the morning before I even do anything else because I just have to. And today's a day that I cannot put off any longer getting rid of the leaves in my yard. I know some people will say, no, leave them there. It's good. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Saw what it was like out there. Having some around is fine. This is a level that it's not. I have to do something with it. So we'll see. And I do have a call with Ellen this morning. Ellen of Spiral Priestess. If you follow my other channel, I was talking about I was doing a daily promotion of my publishing company, which is Katonia Books, and so I was doing the daily, posting it, and I posted hers yesterday. But she and I have a call this morning after this live stream. And usually we're on for about an hour and a half or so. So after that, I have to go out and do leaves. Then I got to come in and do this. And then I forgot I have to grade midterms for my students. And of course, I have one who said I didn't get to do it. So yeah, there's always something there. And good morning, April. So So I was just putting my to-do list together last night, and I'm just like, oh my god, I feel like I don't know, like I don't know which end is up half of the time because there is so much, like I said, I've got grading. My students are now coming, my MIT students are coming to the point where they have to do their papers. The ISFM students are coming to the point where they have to do their projects, whatever they are. I still have to finish editing this book that I'm working on for somebody. And I've got to replenish, and now we're getting towards November, December, so I have to do the new podcast list for 2025. I have to come up with the spring semester. I need to coordinate with teachers for spring semester and what we're teaching for the ISFM in 2025. Although that stuff could wait till December. I've noticed my website for Katonia is like, there's stuff that's out of date. I still have stuff as pre-order that's, that was in June. So I'm like, all right, I really need to get on here and clean stuff up. Plus I have some last minute winterizing stuff to do. Because right now we've been fortunate, not fortunate, double-edged sword. We've not had any rain here and we are in severe drought mode. There's been a lot of fires popping up because people are doing very dumb things like setting off fireworks when there's like these red flag warnings thing. I heard them out in Hampton the other night. I heard fireworks on Halloween night and I was like, who is doing that? And I'm hoping they stopped pretty quickly, so I don't know if like police stopped them or something, but there's literally warnings in place saying nothing with the outdoor, no lighting fires outdoor, so it's really been very, very dry, but the upshot of that when you're trying to blow leaves is that they're not that heavy wet, you can just, use the blower and, knock it out pretty quickly. So hopefully that's going to be the way it goes today. I'm trying to clean out my basement. There's a lot of stuff I'm trying to do right now, and I feel very compelled to do it. And again, I don't know if it's because Venus is in Sag right now, and that's my 6th house. And so my 6th house, I'm like, okay, I have to organize all the things, and that may be why. It may be like, I have to make everything look pretty, right? I have to make everything nice, and yeah. And that may be also why I'm so focused on health and stuff right now too. So. Although my Scorpio's in the 5th house, and as I mentioned to you guys yesterday, I'm working on this novel. I'm hoping that's going to come out earlier in the year. I did notice, people who are interested in my Morrigan book, I did notice that Theon has kind of caught up with themselves at the end of the year, like the Lilith book that they did just came out, so you can check out theonpublishing.com if you're interested in ordering it. I think it's called She of the Night. And they always do really nice editions. So, are very, very artistic editions. So that may be something you want to check out. And I know that Harper Feist has done an essay on Hecate as well. So that is there. I saw that they posted that. And I thought that Jessica had told me David Beth had some kind of essay or project he was completing, but I think it might be part of another book. So that it seems like all of that just suddenly came out. So, and I think the Hecate essay was going out with the Lilith book, like they were kind of doing them in tandem. So, so that looks like that's a really good thing. In fact, I should probably contact her because I know as an author I'm entitled to copies, so I can get free copies from Theon. So, I will see if they're willing to send me one, which would be nice. But I get the impression, I'm kind of seeing things in the background suggest they may be ramping up to do the Morrigan book next, and I'm guessing that would be like 2025. Maybe not right at the beginning of the year, but maybe in the first quarter is what I'm feeling. I don't have confirmation of that yet, but I'm sure I will hear from them soon. So, okay, so yeah, as you can see, there's a lot going on. And I was starting to talk about, if you're in New Jersey, Melissa and I are doing I'm doing like 15-minute tarot readings for $40, but as part of that, she's going to do her aura photography for people. So she's going to give like a free aura photo for everybody who books that reading. So you're going to get that. You want that book. Oh, which book, Joanne? The Morrigan one or the Lilith one? Or the, maybe if it's the Morrigan one, yeah, I would love to see it come out too. I mean, they paid for it last year, so, but yeah, anybody who's in New Jersey and wants to do like aura photos plus tarot, Melissa and I are doing that on December 1st in Chester. It's right in the center of Chester. My book. Oh, Joanne says yours. Yeah, it would be nice. I've put a lot into it. So cool. When is the New Jersey event? It's going to be from 11 to 4 on December the 1st, which I think is a Sunday. So, so that's when it's going to be. We had debated doing it on a weekday, but I thought, too many people have to work and everything, so it's easier if we can find a weekend spot, and I think that's is that the last weekend? No, it's the second to last weekend of my intuitive development class online. Okay, awesome. Chester, December 1st. I love Chester. Chester's really cool. I love Chester too. I only live about half an hour from there, and so it's very convenient for me. I know Melissa, Joanne says I don't work with Lilith for several reasons. Oh yeah, well, a lot of, not every dark goddess is for everybody, certainly. So, but the people who are interested in Lilith, and I've talked a lot about her on the other side of the house, on the Katonia side of the house, so yeah, so I'm interested in seeing the book. I don't necessarily work with her as an entity, but sometimes just even creatively, there's aspects of Lilith that I think are interesting. So, yeah, so, speaking of creativity, I had, Melissa says, I will post details when we are done. Yeah, if you check Melissa's account, and actually if we collaborate, I'll share it on my account too. And then that way, and we're gonna promote it throughout the month, because this will be a lot of fun. And I think it's great. Melissa has a nice little space, and we can do that. And, Joanne says, I see her more as a left-hand path. Yeah, well, I think if you're looking at it looking at Lilith from a Kabbalistic point of view, which is where they look at her as part of like a klepotic kind of a deity, I don't think she necessarily has to be LHP. I'm also not somebody who's always totally against LHP. I don't make the strict distinction between the two, although I realize there's some people who don't want anything to do with it at all. But there are aspects of her that are very similar. Like I said, I know that she like Archangel Samael is often sometimes considered to be klepotic as well, and I don't know if that distinction. I don't know how it really sits with me. But anyway, that's probably a whole separate topic, probably more for Chtonia than here. But it's but I mean, yeah, obviously you do what you don't care for. I'm not against it. It's just not knowledgeable enough, and I wish I was. Okay, yeah, well, that's just it. And not all of us, like, there's a lot about LHP that don't really feel called to. I mean, I know people who practice it. I have read a lot about it, and I knew certain things, and there's a lot of really bad misconceptions about it, which I know that because we've talked about that kind of stuff before. But at the same time, yeah, it's not necessarily, there's elements of that you want to be careful with, and I can certainly relate to that and understand that. So busy month, but I was starting to say, creatively, I had a very interesting message from Azrael yesterday, and it was a really direct one, which, she's tough and not for the weak. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I think you could probably, I think a lot of the dark goddesses are like that. They're very much, they can be empowering, but you have to be careful how you use their energy, and if you're not, like using any of those energies, if you don't feel somewhat solid in your own identity, that's why when I think like somebody in their 20s using this kind of stuff is not great, unless you're working with a mentor or somebody who's helping you, because at the 20s, you're still figuring your identity out. And I think that's why you can very easily kind of be pulled in other directions. I find that, I always think of what Lama Duquette said. In order to do certain types of magic, or you have to be a Solomon. Which means you have to be fully confident in yourself. You have to know yourself. And Sam says, that's true. Even when I work with Saturn, I need to be the right mind and of good health. Yeah, exactly. And exactly, that I feel that way now. Totally. And right, so once we know who we are, and typically that doesn't happen until after at least in your 30s. When you're in your 20s, you're still figuring things out. You're still finding your place in the social sphere and everything else. So working with dark goddesses, it's funny. It was like, because I teach myth to probably 18 to 22-year-olds, and I take it from a very Jungian perspective. And I know that he's the coordinator of the department. He's always like, are you sure this isn't like, I mean, he does it too, by the way. But he's like, are you sure you're not kind of going a little over the heads of these people? Like, it's not quite part of their life experience yet. So I've had to kind of tailor those courses to be a little bit more about trying to help them understand it in terms of their immediate experience at their age. Things they would have experienced by the time they're 18 or 20. Although sometimes I find that they say, oh no, I haven't experienced that. These young, calling her, I'm like, good luck with that. Yeah, young girls, yeah. It was funny that it changed it to Hurls. There's people who will get involved, and there's a lot of reasons in that world. It used to be that when people would initiate people into these different groups, you certainly had to be at the very least like 18, Now I got involved before I was 18. Your phone is the devil. Yeah, your phone has a trickster in it. But I don't know. I mean, I guess you can't just paint everybody with the same brush or judge everybody the same way. But, because some people are at different stages. You have little old people, Sometimes you can burn your fingers, sometimes you can blow yourself up, is what Alex says. Yes, well, exactly. And that is something, again, if you can move into the space where you risk blowing yourself up, but I think there still needs to be a certain solidity of identity before you do that. And, but Jake Stratton Kent, when he was alive, he would have said, well, how do you learn anything if you don't burn your fingers and blow things up? He pretty much said that kind of a thing. So, but to me, I'm thinking, a lot of the people who are kind of, and I don't know, it's interesting because we talk about the brain development of people who are like before the age of 22, 23, where the frontal lobes are not completely developed. And so therefore your risk your tendency to take risk is a bit more, and it's interesting because the card I got for today for today's discussion was the Seven of Cups. So the Seven of Cups has to do with, are you clear on what's real and what's not real and where you're really going, all right? Morgan kicks my butt enough, she says. Well, yeah, she's been around, that's it. Morgan has been around me probably since I was 16 or 17, and that's, I mean, I think for a lot of people that's unusual, and so therefore their understanding might not be, it takes, like any energy that we work with, it takes time to get to know them. You need to, so if somebody feels drawn to pagan practices when they're younger, okay, their understanding, it's like understanding of poetry. I mean, it's like understanding of a lot of things, great literature, poetry. To get the real nuance and meaning in it takes time. For example, when I was, I remember being an undergraduate, I was English Lit and religion double major. And when I did English Lit, it was, I remember when we did poetry, okay? Like the first time I ever read Sylvia Plath. When I read Plath, I mean, I certainly had a certain understanding of her. My God, what a great analogy, poetry. Yeah, it's like, exactly, because when I remember when I would read Plath as an undergrad, I loved her stuff, but I was reading it from a certain point of view. It's kind of, you're at that phase of life where you're still more or less in that initial breaking out phase, you're being independent, you're figuring out who you are, and Plath definitely has that kind of energy where, of the woman who kind of is coming unglued or who's peeling the layers away. Which is, and Plath did all of this before the age of 30, which is like, it's just, it boggles the mind to think about it. But living in that culture and the way in which we start to encounter, as we're trying to make our way in the world, especially as women, the way in which culture, there's that subtle systemic misogyny that can be there in terms of, who you are, what your aspirations should be, how, the kind of, well, back in those days, it was kind of like, why aren't you married yet kind of thing. Like the kind of energy that was around that and the way that Plath kind of represented that kind of angry pushback against that daddy energy, that patriarchal energy. And so you understand it from that place of almost of rage, right? Of that I'm establishing myself as an independent woman kind of thing, or trying to struggle or negotiate the system. When I went and read Plath as a PhD student, then it was I looked at her a whole different way. And there's a lot more nuance to it. And says, your mother's been like that, and she's a female, is what Joanne's saying. Yeah, it's, there's this, you kind of, you have this kind of bursting out that occurs, but now you have more life experience. You know more. You've seen society, you've had your successes and failures. Not that we're still not going to go through life and have successes and failures. I mean, that's as long as we're alive, that's going to happen. But you're coming at it with a place of more wisdom and more experience. You're not coming at it, and you're not coming at it from this place of risk. And that's what I think is interesting. The people who are willing to take the magical risks, I think this is where I was going with this, are people who are at a stage where they can't make that distinction yet. They don't know what's good for them yet. So that's why it's tricky. It's tricky when you're when you're neurologically not ready. It's the reason that people might go out and drive crazy and take risks that the rest of us are like, what is wrong with you? And but that's because to them it's like, yeah, it's not that big of a risk. They're not, death is a far away thing. It's not going to happen to me. I'm young. I'm going to live forever. People don't have they're not necessarily fully aware of the consequences of certain actions or working with certain energies. So, and some people argue that that's the reason why why people make these very stiff, or very extreme kinds of moral declarations for kids at a certain age, because it's almost like you just simply have to tell them it's wrong, because if you give them any kind of nuance, then they think, oh, well, there's room there and it's going to be fine. Like, that may be at least part of the rationale for why society tries to make everything sound bad. But you also have to remember that when you make everything sound forbidden to people, that's just going to, in people's curiosity, and they're like, really, I'm not supposed to do that? Well, why not? Let me go check it out. Like, there's that factor of it too. So I don't know. So it's very interesting in terms of who should be working with dark feminine energies at that particular age. But then again, there's people whose lives contain a lot of darkness right from the get-go. Some people have childhoods that are not just, innocent play and with social acceptability and everybody kind of getting along and being in the, I don't know, whatever the ideal's supposed to be, right? Not everybody lives that kind of a life. In fact, probably a lot of people don't. There's only some kind of dynamic that one has had to negotiate as a child. But the question is whether or not, so you might engage those energies. Again, depending on your soul, what is your soul doing? And if we look at the quantum soul in the bigger picture, what is your soul doing in the bigger picture? Because that can have an impact too. And that's not necessarily going to be reflected in your current life experience. I probably grew up in a relatively stable environment, although when I look back on it, I'm like, oh, no, there were definitely some things there that were not right. But compared to some other people, I had a very stable life, growing up. So why would I get involved in this kind of thing? Well, I don't know. I was drawn into it right from puberty. So it was just, and I've always kind of had an affinity for it. So I'm like, there's got to be some other soul influence from somewhere else. And if you look at my chart, I have that Saturn, Venus, Mars, 12th house, which can go either way. It can make you an absolute criminal, and it can make you a very spiritual person. So, I haven't committed any acts of criminality that I know of, so I assume I've gone the other way with it. But it can draw you into a very deeply spiritual space. There's that edge between the two, and that's interesting because it was Piscean energy that kind of was on my mind today. Because Piscean energy is that it's our imagination, it's our possibilities. It's like, if you can dream it, you can do it kind of a thing. However, the reality is always, especially since we currently still have Saturn, we have Neptune in Pisces and we have Saturn in Pisces. Part of that is, well, you can dream it, but can you do it? Or, are you just going to leave it as a dream and are you not going to manifest it and do it? And I was talking the other day about manifestation, what it takes to bring certain energies down. Joanne says, according to my mother, not being married at 20 made me a woman with questionable morality. Yeah, and nowadays nobody would ever, I don't know, I guess maybe there's some families that still do, but I think the conventional wisdom is that getting married at 20 is a bad idea. I got married at 22, I think. And I still think you don't, because that was the idea, you're just, you're going to school and you're doing all this, yada, yada, but you're really just trying to find a husband. It used to be if you went to college or university, it was, you're going to get your MRS, right? You're going to, you're just going to meet some guy. That's really the only reason you're supposed to go. And that was certainly the thing in the 50s. That's what led to Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique. The idea you had these educated women who now were housewives and taking care of babies all the time, and that their role was just confined to that. School was not practical. Yeah, well, right, exactly. That's why there's a funny thing. If you ever watch Mystery Science Theater 3000, there's a video from Iowa State, is it Iowa State University or Iowa State College? I can't remember. But it was basically for their home economics program, and it was trying to appeal to girls because it would be like, oh, it'll prepare you for that important career of being Mrs. Whomever, and everything, and all the guys in the audience going, boo, it was just, Suda saying, so interesting, I was talking to my husband last night. Joanne, I love Mystery Science Theater 3000. They are the best. And I know they were doing riff tracks, and now they have something else that they're doing as well. The guys from the original MST3K. They're so funny. But, and actually, after they did that one, Iowa State University's like, did we put that video out? Like, they had to go, to their archives and see if they had it, because they were just, they were fascinated. They were like, because it is so dated. It's talking about girls and their vocational opportunities, but of course with respect to them being wives and moms too, which of course is obviously the most envied task. And it's like, really? Unless I got married, my life wouldn't begin really. Right, and that's always the thing. Even Joseph Campbell, you'll see him say that a woman's path to fulfillment is through marriage and children, and I'm like, no, I wouldn't say that. And that's where I think when I talk about the dark feminine, okay, a lot of times, like what we were just saying about Lilith and Hecate and things like that, people say, well, these are kind of dangerous energies. But really, I think when we talk about that, when I use the term, it's really just more about what's in shadow, what's hidden. It's this aspect of femininity that has been hidden. The idea that you as a woman have an identity that's separate from, you have sovereignty, you have freedom, okay? You have an identity that is separate from that of in other words, you're not just defined as Mrs. So-and-so. Like, you have an identity of your own. You have a creativity of your own that's not just about making children. Even though, there's nothing, I'm not saying anything against having children, like, dismissive of that. Obviously, having children is a big thing. It's a big commitment. It's something that, you need to be invested in. There are people who have children who don't want them, who just do it because that's what they're supposed to do. And I don't think, that's why I think it has to be a very careful choice. You have to be prepared for for all these things. And not everybody, postpartum, I think a lot of times has to do with just this realization that you no longer are it's almost like you, in some way, there's an independence that's lost, at least for a period of time, until you can integrate that. And Suda says, my mom wouldn't let me do so many things. Tabling ideas like, once you're married, you can do that. Yeah, right. Like, that's when now you're suddenly regarded as a full adult. And I talked to you about how my aunt, kinds of treats me. It's almost like I'm looked at as a non-person because I don't have a spouse. You know what I mean? Like, there's something, I'm somehow not integrated into society because I don't have a spouse and children. And I'm like, well, no. And I think that is changing in the culture. I think that's part of this quote unquote dark feminine that's coming in. It's not, your life is not defined by the males in your life. That's always the way it's been. That's why I always hated those ideas of, what do they call them? Those, and I don't know, I imagine they still do them in some evangelical communities in the Midwest and down south, like the purity balls, where it was like a father-daughter dance, where the girls are all dressed in white and they pledge their virginity to their father. I mean, I just find that to be appalling on so many levels. Because again, and I think the tagline, because I remember there was a guy, was he Dutch? It was a photographer who came and photographed some of these things, like as part of a photography pictorial documentary kind of thing. And the expression was the Lord is your husband and your father is your boyfriend or something. It was something really I was like, wait. And they're like, oh, no, it's not meant in that way. Then don't say it in that way. There's just every level of wrong with that. But even if you don't want to take the uber creepy side of that, I know from experience, oh God, have you ever been to one of those, Sam? I mean, that to me, that I'm just like, regardless, even if you wanted to take it in a more innocent, this is what I mean by church trauma. Oh, okay. Fair enough. Absolutely. 100%. And to me, though, even if you take out the idea of, even if you want to take the creepy quasi-incest factor out of that, okay, you can, even though they say, oh, no, it's not meant that way. Okay, fine. So it's not meant that way. It still suggests that you are property of your father. And then later you are property of your husband. Okay? And we're not property. That's what sovereignty is about. I'm my own property. I'm not your property. If I marry you, it's that we've chosen to work together, to kind of to be supportive of each other and to work together. We're not, we're merging our holdings, right? My property and your property, but we each still have our own property. We're still, it's not like, okay, I've married you now, so now I'm your possession. But that's always the way it's been construed. And there's almost like a thing of like, well, you're not a proper woman, or you're not, or like Joanne said, like you're not a moral woman. You have bad morals. Because there's the association there, because the woman who is independent is also the woman who's going to be too sexually free and is going to have bad morals, right? Which we know is by no means, the logical corollary to that. My mom said I was trying to steal my father since she was 3. Ew, God, that's creepy. What was your message from Azrael? I think I started to explain. No, thank you. Thank you, Alex, bringing me kind of back to the beginning. Yeah, this was one live stream where I was like, okay, I'm not quite sure where everything's going. Anyway, I've been working on this novel that involves him, and this is what tends to happen with me. Like, this is, when I talk about, like in the Morrigan book, I'm going to talk about being a vehicle for the Morrigan, and I feel like I'm a vehicle for Azrael as well. In fact, Jenny and I went walking last week, and she's like, I feel like, I used to hear his voice is almost distinct from yours. Now I hear like they're kind of the same, or at least that there's more of a merging that's gone on there. And the words I actually wrote them down because I was kind of startled by them. And I'll read the Enochian first, which was, Du garge la fiap old harg. Harg sounds pirate, right? But basically what it means is your strength in art is from the voices that I planted. Okay? So, interesting commentary on, and he said other things too, but that was that struck me because that was not a message I was expecting to get, because I was thinking about this story, and he says, your strength in this is going to come from what I basically tell you to do with it. Interesting. Wow. Yeah. And so back to what I'm saying about inspiration tending to come from other sources. And now we have our own internal sources. We may have our own guides. We have our own, I don't know. I mean, Jung calls it the higher self. I don't know if I like that term, but whatever that center is of the self archetype, whatever that center is of your being. But nonetheless, we all have that, but that connects us to other things that kind of want to speak through us. And in this case, this is Azrael wanting to speak through that mechanism. But it's interesting because we just did the class on, and I'm going to start doing our reading because I do have to finish on time today because I do have a call at 8 o'clock. So, it's when I just find that what happens is there'll be a story, and I'm not quite sure. We were talking about Hecate and Persephone and life cycle, and we're going to talk about that again on Wednesday. We're going to be finishing up the Hecate Persephone piece. Oh, and I released this morning, by the way. I released Hecate Part 1. I edited it yesterday. It took ages because there was more wrong with it than just the vocal tics, which were really loud. I'm like, what the hell was I doing? Like, why is it so loud? But there was other stuff too. So that Hecate Part 1 is now up on the Katonia channel. And it's also on Spreaker for people who follow the podcast. Sarba, you look so nice today. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I did actually put on a little bit of makeup this morning because I am going to be on another call. So I just figured, throw a little something on so I don't look completely, washed out or whatever. But thank you. So, yeah, but the story itself is shaping up to be kind of a feminine initiation thing, kind of almost in the style of Persephone, because the main characters I have, and I already wrote another story about them, but it seems to be morphing into this one, are Aiden or Aiden. I want to say Aiden for some reason, even though it's supposed to be Aiden, and then there's Corinna, and that's kind of like, Aidenus and Kore, and the Kore, right? Like, it's that kind of a thing. So it's almost like it's her initiation into, or her ordeals that she goes through kind of in coming into relationship with Azrael. That's what the story is shaping up to be. I look great all the time. Oh, that's very nice. Thank you. Well, we all know that hat is. I mean, it's very nice that other people think I look great. I have mornings where I look at myself and, I don't know. Anyway, I won't go on to that track, but it's, but yes, but I appreciate you saying that. That's very kind. So this is going to be kind of an initiation. So I'm not sure if it's going to go more title-wise, like an Azrael type initiation. And again, this is not about me. This is just a fiction story. But it's also, but I don't know, there's also kind of a romantic element to it as well that's coming in, in the way that he encounters this particular character. And I'm not suggesting this character is me, by the way. I'm just, it's like with the Morrigan timelines. This is not a story about me. This is just kind of how this story is being projected out. But it's kind of coming into that ordeal of coming into a womanhood kind of thing. So it's kind of what do they call it? A Bildungsroman, like a coming of age. Interesting. I'm starting to feel like one of my guides is trying to get me to write. Just can't hear exactly what yet. Yeah, and sometimes we get ideas that we feel like, I know I have gotten some writing ideas. My Lilith's in Scorpio, don't forget, in the 5th house. So sometimes I get ideas for things, especially sometimes they're like horror type things. Sometimes they're just really outrageous sexually and other things. And I'm like, can I write this and put this out there? So I don't know. It's just kind of, so I always have to think about it, but then I'm like, okay, but if this is passing through me, I have to see, what is the value of this to the narrative? If people are going to be totally distracted by that kind of stuff and say, oh, this is going to turn out to be this like erotica or something, then I kind of pull it back, because I don't, like with Maeve, I did that. I'm like, I don't want this to be completely focused on, that's not the point, and if I think people are going to look at that and miss the rest of the point, then I'll pull back on it. But that's what I had gotten this morning. So it's quite interesting. And it's so funny because I had pulled a card. I said, what do I want to talk about this morning? The 7 of Cups. And what's the center card of our reading? But the 7 of Cups. And that's, this is the card of projections. Now, as I've told you, projection, we have to recognize when a projection isn't true. Okay. All right. Because a lot of times, if we look at another person and say, oh, that person is X or Y or whatever, it may not be that that person is, it may be that there's something in us that we're kind of seeing mirrored through them, okay? Now that doesn't mean that person, there might not be something true about that in that person as well, you know what I mean? So for example, if you encounter somebody who's a hardcore narcissist, and I know we hate throwing that word around these days, but I mean, we've all dealt with people who are gaslighting and who do, different things. That doesn't mean I can see that in you, therefore I'm a narcissist and I'm a gaslighter. That's not what projection means. Projection just means, but you can see certain qualities, and potentially when you see certain distortions in people, you're kind of like, okay, well, what does this say about the bigger picture? Okay. Or maybe what even in myself, that is there something in there that I'm uncomfortable with? Because we all have the potential to be a lot of different things, right? So when we see things that tend to be very, very chaotic, I was thinking about that the other day too with Eris, like the goddess of chaos. And because I realized I've never done a podcast on Eris. I can't, so that's on the list for 2025. But and I did do a live stream for Catonia, I think back in March, because I went and looked it up. But but I remember in the story of how these two guys supposedly came into Arisianism was that they had this this figure that appears and asks them these questions. And it ended with the line, somebody had to put all this chaos here. And I think it's funny because most of the time, think about it, the justification or the rational justification for religion or for the existence of God is somebody had to put all this order here. And I just thought about that this morning. Somebody had to put all this chaos here. So anyway, that kind of jumped into my mind. But anyway, the inner feeling of which we're unaware, there's our blank space again, right? There's the blank space. We're not consciously aware of this blank space. But the fact that it's the Hierophant gets back to what I've said about life experience. It's easier to negotiate the blank space when you're more solid in your own position, when you kind of have a sense of who you are. Now, you may be becoming somebody else. There may be aspects of you that are going away, but we may be in this moment of confusion, and the external feeling of which we are aware is the totality card. This is the 5 of Wands. And totality means putting your total focus on something, okay? That we're aware that we need to be focused on something. This is the trapeze artists, right? You need to watch to make sure you do the join. That you when you pass through this, that you grab the next person and focus entirely on what you're doing. Now, that actually is kind of looking at this card from the other perspective, because the 5 of Wands is usually a card of people distracting you from the outside. And I think that aspect, though, we've got 2 5s here. I think that's the aspect. The struggle is what we see outside versus this empty space that we have inside that we are going to create with, that we're going to do something new with, but we don't know enough about it. So we're kind of stuck in this middle space where we don't know what's real and what's not real, right? And this has been coming up in a lot of readings. Like I did the Aries through Virgo readings, which I'm going to post this morning. But they're like, yeah, it's like this totality. Like you're in this space where trying to figure out the difference between internal and external. What's you, what's not you. I think I've talked about this with a number of you. Like what's you and what's not you. What's coming and what's coming from your guides, or what's coming from your creative inspiration and sources, and not just what you've kind of picked, what you're doing to fit in with the collective, right? What are you doing to fit in? I have to compromise this because people may not like this or may not like that, or yes, but if I don't do this, my family will think, what's wrong with you? There's all kinds of things that we have, these externals that don't have anything to do with us. Okay, they do and they don't. We struggle with them, but it's like trying to, and when the thing is, they can be a distraction when we're trying to figure out what to do with the new space that we're in, because we don't know it's real, it's not real. So what's the answer? Well, we have the Eight of Swords here. This is the Eight of Clouds, what they're calling the guilt card. It's not about being guilty, and that's a phrase I hear a lot too, is like, I want to make sure I don't make a mistake. I want to make sure I do it right. And the guilt card is just saying, no, drop the mind. I literally got that message this morning too. Drop the mind. Don't try to control everything with the mind, because we tend to do that as we get in this kind of organizational mode. We think that the mind thinks that, like, okay, I have a handle on all of this, and what you need to do is be comfortable with not having a handle on all of this, because we have the completion card as the outcome. Something has come to an end. There's some way of doing things that's going to come to an end, and allowing yourself to get tied up in that mental space where, and that may be one of the problems of experience, is that sometimes we have an experience and we say, oh, this situation's coming up, and I feel like it's like this situation in the past, so therefore the outcome is going to be the same. And that's not necessarily true. A lot of times it's a matter of, we may be faced with the same thing, but we may need to take a different approach. We may need to look at it from the other side, So it's not a matter of just mass opinion on things. I know we do like to look to each other, like when we have something, we're like, can I bounce this off of you? And that's the other way we use projection. We bounce things off of people to see what the response is, to see if is this just me? Is this everybody else? But if it's not everybody else, that doesn't necessarily mean it's problematic, okay? So yeah, there's this idea of getting out of the tangle of the mind. There's a whole lot here about moving into the heart space. And I know that sounds, and the thing is, it sounds cliche to people. Oh, I'm going to move into the heart space, like, oh yeah, everybody's just going to be about love, whatever. Like it sounds like something out of the 60s, right? Oh, all you need is love, right? And everybody's kind of like, yeah, well, then we moved into the 80s where all of those people who were all about, love, peace, and dropping out or were, now became stockbrokers, So we that's the change in energy there. But it's saying, no, there's a bigger picture now. There's other ways to look at it, and that feminine way of looking at it, saying it's not either this or this. It's not like you have to be this or that. There's more possibilities here, and that's the other side of the Seven of Cups. That there's a lot of that's all the possibilities you can look at. Now, not all of them will be viable in the end, but you have more options than you think, and I think that's really what we're getting down to with this. So, so interesting, right? And how I'm going to be writing the story in the midst of the to-do list that I have. This is only one of my to-do lists. Speaking of trying to control stuff, right? I mean, we'll see how well that works out. But it's, I've got all of this stuff that's coming up that I'm going to have to, but trying to kind of write this in between. Last year, what I did was I took like a week off, like the last week of December, right after Christmas, and up to, first week of the new year, and went over to England and spent a week just writing. And I would love to do that again this year. I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford to do that, so I have to look at the finances, because when I go there, everybody's talking about my hair. I'm like, yeah, that's when I want to go back to London and have, because she does something called Illumin on my hair, which my current hairdresser doesn't do, because she knows how to do it, but she's like, yeah, but it takes hours and it's messy, and she just doesn't do it. So if I want it done, and I love my hairdresser in London, so I want to go see her. But I don't know if I'm going to get to. That's really what it comes down to. And if not, I might end up just blocking the calendar off for a week at the end of December and just, just saying, okay, I'm not going to do anything else but work on this. So we'll see how that works out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for joining me. We're at 7:45, so I'm going to probably close up now. I hope you all have a great week. It is Monday. My hatred of Mondays has gone away because I don't have to go to a 9-to-5 job, but I know those of you who do. Oh, you're welcome, Pat. so, so hopefully you have a good week at work. Everything goes okay. And yes, I do have a lot of work to do, but my schedule is a little more, I don't know. It's going to be a busy week. And I'm probably not going to have a real break until next week. So have a beautiful day, everyone. You're welcome. You're welcome. And you're welcome. And yeah, so I will see you guys tomorrow morning, I think is what we're looking at. So, so have a wonderful rest of your day. And you're welcome. And I'll catch up with you on everything soon.